we didn't watch the show. And looking back when I was doing research for the book, I could figure out why, because I was looking at the time slots and we were watching WKRP in Cincinnati when.
Priorities.
Right, yeah.
Welcome to Land of Laura, the irreverent yet scholarly podcast about all things Laura Ingalls Wilder. Back in 2011, the world of Little House welcomed one of its most creative and entertaining narratives in The Wilder Life. The third book by Chicago writer and essayist Wendy McClure, who's also a longtime children's book editor, The Wilder Life received advanced praise from Megan Daum, Gretchen Rubin, and Alison Arngrim, whose own memoir, Confessions of a Prairie Bitch, had come out just the year before. Documenting a home site pilgrimage in, as one review called it, a funny and poignant account about how to reconcile childhood obsessions with our adult selves, The Wilder Life became an immediate favorite for Laura Ingalls Wilder fans everywhere. Today, we have Wendy in the studio to talk about The Wilder Life, jellied salads from the 1970s, and the random and not so random Little House connections that have made their way into her life. Wendy, thank you so much for coming to talk to us today. When we have guests on for the first time, we usually ask for their Little House origin story. I think yours has already been documented in The Wilder Life, but for those who haven't read it, or for what might be missing from the book that didn't make it into the book, tell us your Little House origin story.
I read the books starting in about third grade, I think. And it's worth noting I didn't own the books. We were a library family. And so we went to the public library like on a weekly basis. So, I would, go check them out. I definitely remember, I can even remember the shelf in the library where they were, the section where the hardcovers were, and then the paperbacks were like on a rack. I read and reread them enough that I read them in both formats. And I don't even really know how I came to read them in the first place, just that I was reading them. I do have like a specific memory of at one point reading on the banks of Plum Creek and how long it was. And it felt like, wow, this is so long. And it was just the books. The TV show was not on my radar at all. I know we've talked about how weird this is, but because this was in the early 80s or late 70s, we didn't watch the show. And looking back when I was doing research for the book, I could figure out why, because I was looking at the time slots and we were watching WKRP in Cincinnati when.
Priorities.
Right, yeah. And even if there had been that time slot conflict, I don't think my parents would have watched it. I don't know. The idea of like family-friendly content wasn't really their thing. I mean, we were latchkey kids, my brother and I, and things were a little freeform, I guess. So I knew there was a show called Little House on the Prairie, but I didn't know it was like that little house on that prairie for a really long time. And I now have a different appreciation of the TV show, sort of more as an adult, but it wasn't part of my experience. So I read them and then moved on, as you do sometimes, and then not owning them, except for one sort of paperback copy of Little House in the Big Woods that came from a classroom somewhere. I don't know, like how we came to get it, or like who stole it, or what. I don't know.
How do books appear in our
shelves?
I know,
yeah. I know. I feel like I'm sounding like we were like feral kids or something, but anyway.
I think all of us were slightly feral in the 70s.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And anyway, I didn't revisit them until years later, the books. And so then I came across them, I think first at my first editorial job, where I was working for a textbook company in the late 90s. It was a K through 8 reading series. And so there was a selection that was from Little House in the Big Woods, and it was like the pig bladder section. And I remember like rereading it and being like, oh, that's what a pig bladder is. And then about a decade after that, I picked up this battered, possibly stolen paperback copy of Little House in the Big Woods that I'd retrieved from storage at my parents' house. and I got into it. My boyfriend at the time, now my husband, he's very helpful. And a really helpful thing he did was find a box set of the paperbacks at a local record store in Lincoln Square. And
At a
so,
record store. I love it.
yeah, a record store that had also had like used books. And so, he had come back and he was like, "Hey, I have something for you. I don't know if you want it, but I just, because I think I had told him about like what rereading Big Woods was like. And so they were the blue cover paperbacks,
Mm.
which I now know are the Reader's Digest editions. But yeah, so I started rereading them, and so there was sort of this whole summer where I was really just sort of going through them, and I always had a copy and like in my purse, and I remember reading them at the ALA conference in Pasadena, California, where I was doing that for work, and I was reading Plum Creek, and then I was reading The Long Winter on a camping trip in Michigan. And, so I sort of remember it was just all sort of over the course of the summer. And so, it really all just sort of came back. And so then I really sort of got into the books in a really big way then and became a little obsessed with them.
Right around this time, I think, speaking of obsession, is when you started a Twitter account.
It is about the time. I think I'll have to go back and look at the dates, but it was like it definitely predated being interested in doing a book. I think it was around 2008, and it was just something fun that let me engage with the books in this kind of online world that I was part of as a blogger, because I've been blogging for a few years, and
It was called Half Pint Ingalls.
yes, Half Pint Ingalls is the name and of the Twitter account, and I just put up a picture of Laura Ingalls Wilder and just like the prairie, and and I had posts like um trying hard to love this doll made from a corn cob, and then like today was a pretty good day until the ox fell through the dugout roof, or there was a lot of today was a pretty good day until we all got diphtheria. There was a lot of that. And so some of it was feeling out what's sort of universal about the books. When I think about it too, I think there's a through line about encountering new technology and new development, as in this, world that was starting to modernize as they moved west. There's the threshing machine in Big Woods, and there's the locomotive train, and the electricity from the telegraph line, and just all these little things. And so I was thinking like, okay, we're doing this too, encountering all these new things. So I was trying to sort of bring that sense of, such a marvel, as Ma would say, to Twitter, or as the Twitter graph.
It actually felt, from where I sat, it actually felt viral. Like you went a little viral, but am I overestimating that?
It took off a little bit. I don't know if there was ever like a big viral moment. Maybe there was a little bit in, I think, November of 2008, or maybe it was the next year after that. John Hodgman, who actually has a really nice podcast, and he is someone I worked with on some writing stuff a few years back. He had actually been my editor when I was doing some things for the New York Times Magazine, and I retweeted something of his as Half Pint. Half Pint, it's not me, it's Half Pint. I always want to say it, like, refer to her in the third person.
It's the character. Yeah.
It's the character. And they're not tweets, they are Twitter graphs. So, and I think he retweeted, and he tweeted something funny like, I have to do my chores, but I would just like to read tweets from Half Pint or something like that. And I think I got maybe 10,000 followers in that day or something like that. That was, I think, the only thing that was sort of a viral moment, but it was fun. It was fun, like interacting with people and doing this sort of weird pretending thing, and also sort of thinking about like, okay, what would Half Pint's take be on this thing or that thing? So.
And you had actually gone viral before that for a completely separate reason, with your notorious Weight Watcher recipe cards that you posted on the internet with commentary. I remember how absolutely huge that was, and hopefully the show notes will send people to that so they can laugh at it as hard as I did if they haven't seen them yet. But please tell us how that came about.
Okay, so that was 2002. I had a blog, and basically what I did is I just found these recipe cards that my mom had had, and I thought they were really funny. And I was partly influenced by some websites that were out there already that were kind of making fun of funny pictures of food from, the mid-century. And like the Gallery of Regrettable Food was a big website. I was like, oh, I could do something like this. And it reflects a couple of different patterns in my life. First, that a lot of things that I end up writing about are things that came out of my parents' basement, like the recipe cards that I found, this back, and I was just laughing at them. And this battered copy of Little House in the Big Woods that also came out of my parents' basement. And then the other sort of pattern is that things I've done trying to be quote unquote a real writer, like doing an MFA program, which I did, starting a novel, which I've done a couple of times. And they haven't taken me as far as things I've done just to kind of amuse myself. So, yeah, that was bigger. That was, I think at one day it was something like 1.4 million hits.
That's
And
crazy.
it was crazy. And then also, this was back in the era where hot linking was a thing you had to worry about, and not having enough bandwidth for these photos. And originally, I think my site had run on like something called like homestead.com, which actually is really funny. Um,
Right?
right. Yeah. So, yeah. And then Homestead, it was, just like, the bet with the government. I guess I was making a bet with this, internet service provider that I wouldn't use over, I don't know how many, megabytes of data. And they kicked me off. so I, so I had to move everything quickly to a new website and get new hosting. And where I moved it to is where it still is today. And the server and
Oh,
the guy who runs it was someone that Pamela Ribbon from Pammy.com knew.
oh.
And it's really funny. I don't even know what he's doing now. I should really sort of reach out to him, because I think he was just like maybe like a 19-year-old entrepreneur or something like that, who had a bunch of servers that he was running out of his garage, but he had lots of space that he could get you for cheap. And so I remember having to move all that stuff and being up late, moving these files. And the funny thing was that I couldn't even begin to explain to my coworkers and my boss at my job, which was this, small, very sleepy children's book publisher. There were still typewriters in all the offices, and they were very, everyone was like my mom's age, and it was very a little tech averse.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to explain to them what was happening, and like they couldn't even begin to understand. My boss was like, "These people on the internet, what are they doing to you?" I'm like, "Nothing. It's just, like, are they pictures of you?" I'm like, "No, it's just like just
They're
the
looking at
vocab."
these pictures of jellied food with
Right?
mackerel and laughing at what I say about them.
Yeah, yeah. So, and I got so many emails from people. It's like, "Oh, I made those back in the day," and people were asking for the actual recipes, and I'm like, "I'm sorry, that's not what the site is for." And it actually kind of wound up being sort of a calling card for agents and editors that were interested in maybe doing a book. And because I think on my blog, I was flirting with the idea of turning some of that blog content into a memoir. And so I think I had something on my site being like, "Oh, I'm kind of working on a book." And so like people started asking. And so that was kind of cool.
And you did do a memoir.
Mhm.
When was that published?
That was 2005. So
Okay. I'm Not the New Me.
I'm not the new me. Yeah, the deal was in, I think, 2003 or 2004, and I signed with an agent, and then we sent it out to some of the other editors who had sort of asked to see it, and then wound up at Riverhead, and so it came out in 2005. And so it was sort of about, a sort of memoir of my life, and it was sort of
Hmm.
about dating. It was about sort of about dieting, and that's where these horrible diet recipes, fit in, and the sort of the disgusting food.
Did you have a favorite recipe card?
Honestly, I think the fluffy mackerel pudding was really iconic. Yeah. And a couple of years later, we did actually a book of the recipe cards, and with just the commentary, and we also had some book parties for to celebrate the book coming out, uh, and a couple of them were at restaurants. And so at one place, I think one place they made something that just looked like fluffy mackerel pudding, but at another place I think they actually made it, and it smelled like cat food. And they were, they were in these little cups. And also the cards, there were pages of the cards in my first book, the memoir. There was sort of this little color supplement. And that was interesting too, because at first I was sort of like, I don't know if I want these in there. It's, it's only sort of tangential to my memoir, but it actually turned out being kind of a great thing, because when I was out promoting the book, even people who hadn't really read the book, which I find out, in the world of book promotion, a lot of times it's most people.
Yeah.
If I'm doing like a radio thing, or,
Right.
or whatever, they would look at those cards, and these little color pages in the first printing. And so we could at least talk about those. In a lot of ways, they were sort of like an icebreaker. I don't know. No.
Well, and fast forward to 2025, and why don't you tell us what happened there? Because that ties in everything we're going to talk about today.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So after my memoir came out, and then after a book collection of these recipe cards called The Amazing Mackerel Pudding Plan came out in 2006, and that was kind of like a humor book. Then nothing much happened after that. The book actually was in print for sort of a short time, because everything is full color pages. And what I know about publishing, that they're really expensive to reprint. So they did a pretty big print run, and then when they stopped selling, they didn't print anymore. So I don't know if it's officially out of print, but it's definitely out of stock. But it's fine. That's something that happens. And so the book has been out there, and it's hard to get now.
Mhm.
It's I think if you look on Amazon, some weird algorithm, prices it really high, because there's not that many out there. But Melissa Gilbert has it. So this summer I got this email from Modern Prairie, her lifestyle website, with a picture of Melissa Gilbert holding up the book, and said, we are working on doing some kind of like food collab, involving these recipes. And so, do you want to get on a call? And so I'm like, wait, what? And I explained also, I'm like, I'm not really selling this book anymore. It's not really out there. So I'm not really promoting them, but hey, I'm into whatever. And so it was part of something that that Melissa and I think Elena, who is her a contributor to the site, who does a lot of the food stuff. They were doing this sort of challenge called Stirring Up Trouble, where they were going to show each other selected recipes and give each other the challenge to sort of reimagine it. So
And coincidentally, you happen to be the person who wrote a memoir about traveling to the Little House sites.
yes, yeah. So, and Melissa actually interacted with Half Pint Ingalls on Twitter.
Really?
Yeah, years back in the day, and I think exchanged a couple of DMs with her. I mean, nothing, just sort of like, hi, you're cool, and
Did she
so
remember you from that then?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think I'm trying to think about all the ways, we're sort of connected too. Because when the Wilder Life came out, I also did some events with Alison Armgrim, and so I think she knew about me from the Wilder Life, and being sort of maybe peripherally, connected with folks at Lollapalooza and Alison Armgrim, Nellie Olson, and Dean Butler. Also, something I forgot about is in this book, The Amazing Mackerel Pudding Clan. which I did in like 2005, years and years before I sort of returned to the Little House books. But I expanded the collection in this book, the original online collection of the recipe cards with comments. It's about a couple dozen of them.
Yeah, I
And
think I remember that. I'm pretty sure that I read it and I perhaps owned it at one point.
well, if you still have it, it's worth a lot now. No, it's I don't know. It's
So I hear.
yeah. And so obviously they wanted to fill out a whole book. So I did something like 100 more cards or so. And so really had to expand it and, spent a summer going through these cards and coming up with sort of comments and things to say. And, in doing this, I was sort of reaching for sort of like pop cultural touchstones from the 70s. These cards actually, they have a copyright date of 1974.
Mm,
So, guess what else happened in 1974?
exactly.
Yeah.
Little House on the Prairie premiered on September 11th, 1974.
Yes. So I have one of the cards, it's in the dessert section, and it's for a recipe called pumpkin orange melange. So it was a Little House on the Prairie reference I made with this card, the commentary. Some of it is on the food, and some of it is on just like the really kind of bonkers food styling that they do, and like all the weird like props they have in the background. And
Yeah, like what were there? Like
they're little figurines, and there were candles. There were things that looked like this sort of like 70s linoleum in the background. Here's one like random pineapples.
right, random pineapples.
Just all kinds of weird stuff. And so in this one, the stuff they have in the background, I think there's a basket and there's things that look like meat. And then this kind of like rusty, I don't know, it's a pitcher or a flour sifter or something, kind of like on its side. It's very sort of shabby chic. Honestly, I don't know if you've ever looked at some of the stuff on littlehouseontheprairie.com when they do those recipes. They do a lot of stuff with pie tins. It was, yeah. And so yeah, that country aesthetic, So it's like that, except maybe a little weirder. But and then some oranges. And so the comment I had here was, the props here tell us that this scene is from the first season of Little House on the Prairie. That episode where Pa Ingalls brings home some of them fancy oranges from the city and nobody knows what the hell to do with them because they're at a little freaking house on the prairie. And Ma tries making a pie with them, but nobody eats the pie except Mary because she's blind. I'm a little ashamed with that last line, but
it's okay. It's okay.
So yeah, so I realize now that like the maybe subconsciously anyway, it was the energy was there, but I hadn't come across the books yet.
So you did an Instagram Live where you just talked about them. Was that
That's
what
right?
happened?
Yeah. We chatted about the books and the recipes, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, here's the thing: is that these recipe cards are out there. Anyone can buy them on eBay and make fun of them, and so like nobody actually really. I don't own these cards or anything like that. Nobody actually has to involve me, but I like that they did. I really appreciate it. It was so cool to meet Melissa, online and talk to her and hang out. So yeah, it was super fun.
Yeah. So in 2011, you publish The Wilder Life, which is 14 years ago now, and it chronicles your pioneer pilgrimage of visiting the Little House home sites. What was the moment that made you realize you were looking at your next book project?
Someone had to sort of tell me that it was actually because I was talking about it hypothetically for a really long time. I was reading the books and I was telling everyone, all my friends, everyone I could think of, I'm like, all these books are so fun. Have you read them? Have you read them in a long time? And I said something like, I would love to go around all the home sites one day and write a book about it. And so I kept on saying that. And then finally, one of my closest friends, who I've known since college, and he works in publishing, he said, I think you need to do that now. And I'm like, oh, you think? And he mentioned Melissa Gilbert's coming out with a memoir and, just sort of things in the air that, sort of gave him the sense that maybe, it was sort of time for people to be kind of looking at Little House again. And, I feel like that time has come up again and again over the years.
Yeah.
So,
But I feel like around 2010 was the time when really everyone just started looking around and seeing how many people were really into it.
right. Yeah. And so I wrote an email to my agent. And this is kind of a weird idea, but I'm kind of thinking about this. And then she wrote back, she's like, "Oh yeah, you should do it. Let's do a proposal." It was interesting because, I had to sort of come up with like, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to take this trip. We're going to take a bunch of trips. And also maybe I'll churn butter and, and also maybe I'll watch the TV show. Actually, it wound up being like a really big idea at first. I think I was, I had so many other things that I think I was going to like do like all the crafts. I wanted to,
make every recipe in Barbara Walker's cookbook.
Yes, and maybe live in a log cabin for a month. Just it was a little too ambitious, and it took me a little while. I think I had a draft of the proposal, and then I wrote some pages, and then they were like, nah, and I had to go back a couple of times, but then they were like, okay, we're gonna go shop this around. And I think the original working title I had for it was Prairie Dork. And and we were pretty sure that Megan, my editor at Riverhead, would be interested in it. And because, she had published my memoir and was like, hey, we should do something again. And
do you know who came up with the final title?
It was Megan. So yeah, she's like, no, it's something like The Wilder Life. So wound up at Riverhead. Although actually for a minute, I think we were shopping it around to some other publishers, and actually Harper Collins made an offer, and
wow,
which was cool, and it was sort of worth, definitely worth considering because they were saying I could maybe have access to the archives, and and that would have been super cool. But I really wanted to work with Megan again because she is a great editor. So we went from there and started planning all the trips, and I bought a butter churn on eBay,
which is documented in the book, fully documented.
Yeah.
Everybody should read it. Looking back on it now, what is your relationship with the book? Do you view it any differently than you did when you were writing it, or any differently than you did, in the publicity after it came out?
If I were writing it today, I think there were things I would probably get into a little bit more. I think our country's really sort of complicated relationship with the Little House books. And I think I was a little bit tentative about going into that. I knew there was sort of something there, and there were just so many strong feelings all around. And I knew I wanted to write about my experience, and I was very careful about not wanting to tread on other people's experiences. And I think that was good for the time. I think now I think I would still want to be considerate, but I think I would also go in a little deeper and explore things a little bit more. But also I think in 2009, 2010, when I was writing this, the conversation was also very different at the time. But I think we were just starting to have some of these conversations that we've been having for the past few years. I'm happy with how the book turned out. I think it was really a great experience. It was fun writing a travelogue. It's sort of weird and surreal to think that I did so much butter churning at events.
Have you churned butter since then?
Not for a while, although I think I can't remember the last time I did it, but it has never been actually for just to make butter. It's always been performative.
And you got great blurbs. You got Alison Arngrim to give a blurb for it. She loved it. Megan Daum, who I love, blurbed it. Gretchen Rubin. How did your life change once that came out?
Well, one way my life changed is I think everyone suddenly wanted me to look at everything having to do with Laura Ingalls Wilder.
Yes, let's have Wendy McClure weigh in on this.
Yeah. And so I feel like I was getting every kind of social media post having anything to do with
Mm-hmm.
Laura Ingalls Wilder. I was getting tagged on things. I think to this day, I still get, there's that, there, I've seen actually at least one or two versions of the photo of the Little House on the Prairie DVD, in a store somewhere where there is a sticker over the word house in such a way that it says Little House on the Prairie. Surely you have seen this.
I have. I have. I have.
And, and so people are like, what is to see this? I'm like, yeah, okay, thank you.
Thanks
Um,
very much.
yeah.
Appreciate you thinking of me.
so, I mean, that's as side effects go, that's fine. Thank you for thinking of me. After a while, I think people forgot that I have a large collection of sunbonnets in my closet.
Yes, I just reread The Wilder Life, and I was reminded of that. You bought a lot of
A lot.
sunbonnets.
Yeah. Do I still have them? I still have most of them, and they actually come in handy.
For what?
I like Halloween costumes.
Ah.
Last year, a costume party theme at Halloween was like maybe like a mashup costume, like it was
Mm-hmm.
sort of, so I was like, okay, what can I do? That's like Holly Hobby because I got the sunbonnet. And then I came up with Holly Hobgoblin. So, so, right.
Nice.
And that was fun. And it was also like super easy and I loved it. I think the other thing that happened is that writing this book sort of brought my worlds together in my life in an interesting way. I mean, there was my life as sort of a writer and then a person who does, goofy stuff on the internet. But then also, what I for years called my day job, which was, I'm a children's book editor. Everything kind of came together a lot more because those things used to be really kind of separate because,
Mm-hmm.
like I said, I'd call being an editor, a day job. But then I would go home and put, pictures of weird jellied salads on the internet and make fun of them and also recap, dumb television shows and, whatever the hell else, and that was a little bit separate. And if someone from the children's book world knew me from that other world, it was a little weird. And I think that's also some of that was the nature of like how the internet was like
Mm-hmm.
decades ago. And now it's sort of less so. But I think it also sort of awakened kind of an interest in children's books in a new level because, here I was sort of, going back and returning to this children's book that I really love and sort of thinking about the history and then also really sort of becoming kind of interested in the history of children's books, which was also kind of related to my job because the company I worked for was a very old company and it was approaching its 100th anniversary. And so I was seeing lots of, we had these boxes in actually the attic of, the office building that had all these old books. And there was one summer where we went through them all and it was really cool. And so it,
What time period were the books from?
the, actually anything from like 1919 up to the 70s. And so it was a lot of stuff from the 20s and 30s and 40s.
So did this work in children's publishing have a way of sort of tying you into the Little House world, even from a professional perspective?
Yeah, going back and doing all this research for The Wilder Life and reading about the history of the Little House books and how they came to be, suddenly I had all these names of these editors, and that really sort of got me interested in the sort of children's book history and what they were doing. And so I had an entry point into this world.
Do you mean Laura's editors in particular, or just famous children's book editors that you just learned about?
Well, actually, kind of both, because one of them, one of the most famous children's book editors you hear about, Ursula Nordstrom,
Mhm.
also happened to be one of Laura's editors.
For a
And
very
so,
long time.
yeah. So I think actually that was sort of the first entry point. Oh, Ursula Nordstrom. Oh, well, I know about her a little bit from my job. And so I got a little more interested in that. And so then this whole other world sort of opened up that I think has been sort of slowly developing in the years since I worked on The Wilder Life and has sort of given me a new relationship to the job that I do now. and
The world of children's publishing.
children's publishing, yeah.
Would you come back sometime to talk to us about that?
Oh my God, yes.
Ooh, fantastic. I am going to hold you to that. And everyone, if you're listening, should read The Wilder Life. It is a fantastic memoir going through all of the home sites, churning butter, meeting strange people. I'm not going to spoil any of that for you because you should read it. It is still out there. It is well worth reading. Thank you so much for being here, and hopefully we'll hear from you again soon.
Yay!
And thanks to all of you for joining us today. Land of Laura is created and executive produced by me, Sandra Hume. Special thanks to Canadian folk punk band The Dreadnaughts for our theme music, and extra special thanks to guests like Wendy McClure, who give so generously of their time and knowledge. I hope to see you next time. Make sure you subscribe to Land of Laura on your favorite podcast channel so you can hear about episodes as soon as they drop. As Pa says, there's plenty more down cellar in a teacup, and as Mom might have said, it takes all kinds of people to make a little house world.